When you look at where tariffs landed, how much of this cost on the American people, both the small business owners you mentioned and consumers, how much of this cost from these Trump policies could have been avoided, and where do we go from here?
Well, this is unbelievable to me, and I will say that as a member of the leadership, I'm going to be sitting right behind the Supreme Court, so it's going to be very unclear if, when Trump looks down with vengeance, he's going to be looking at us or the Supreme Court. And I will say that I think that the cost of this, and the court acknowledged this, their opinion was mostly on the legality of this, the misuse of this statute, which Trump, I believe that his team knew from the very beginning. It doesn't even mention the word tariff. I was at the argument. It was pretty obvious to me, but they just kept doing it. So the cost mounted over time. Average American family last year, according to the Yale Lab, spent about $1,700 they didn't need to spend on this. Oh. That's cost. I mentioned the small businesses. It's dried up markets of farmers. One of my soybean farmers called it a perfect storm of ugly between higher input costs for things like fertilizer and machinery, and then, of course, drying up their market to half of what it was.
Yeah. When you look at the nation that Trump addresses tonight, all the data we have, I already went through it earlier in the show, it shows a disapproval and a rejection, not just of his overall second term, but specific issues, economy and immigration, where we all go back to the end of the campaign. For whatever reason, he was higher on those issues, sort of in theory rather than in governance. Where does that leave your opposition party in looking at a nation that's soured on Trump when he still has 3 years left?
The American people have seen with their own eyes. They're not going to listen to his lies anymore. They know what the State of the Union is for them. And while we will hear the words out of his mouth, we will hear him boasting about himself, we'll see the rubber stamp Republicans on the other side standing for everything he says, out there in the galleries and out there at home are going to be Americans, some of them Republicans, some independents, but a lot of Democrats as well, who seen nothing but bad. They've seen their costs go up. They've seen the chaos of this. A recent national poll showed that 62% of them see that he is using government to enrich himself. So while he is hawking products on Truth Social and on other media platforms to enrich himself, to sell things, they are seeing their grocery costs go up. They're seeing housing, first-time home buyers, homes out of reach. They're seeing what's happening with their health care costs, insurance, and he won't even extend the health care tax credits to help people, the majority of whom are in red states, with their affordable care tax plans. He won't do it. Cost keeps going up, chaos keeps going up, and corruption is up. The American people know it. And the guests that we all invited, whether it was Senator Schumer's guest, a victim of Epstein, and the refusal of the Trump administration to release all those files and to take out the redactions, or whether it is a person who depends on health care and has seen their health care premiums double and triple, or my guy who is a brewer, apolitical. We are bringing guests that really do understand the State of the Union. And
finally, we're hearing reports it could go over 90 minutes, close to 2 hours. At what point does this constitutional exercise become its own version of a filibuster?
We will see what he does. I am just, my goal is to be ready to stay awake through the whole thing. I always do. My goal is to be there because, some of my friends have decided to not go. Totally get that. But a number of us believe that, if he's going to come to our house, to the Congress, then we got to be there. If he's going to go after my state, which he well could after he sent 3,000 ICE agents, 2 innocent citizens, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, killed, if he's going to go after my state and explain why which I'd love him to do, dragged an elder Hmong man out of his home with nothing but his underwear on and threw him in a car and realized they had the wrong guy. I want to be there, as do the House members in my state. We want to be there, the Democrats, to stare him down and tell him we are here and you're in our house.
And who knew the president could follow any part of the Constitution?
Right? Well, I want to give you the floor. We talked about this is one of those nights we will give the president the floor on this channel. I want to give you the floor tonight, as I did to the senator. What is your party saying to the country tonight?
Well, what the White House is saying we'll see tonight is a reset. But what I think we'll get is a rerun, despite the fact that the country desperately needs a reboot. I was in Davos watching the president on a world stage, and what did he do? He aired grievances and attacked people in the room. I watched parts of the National Prayer Breakfast where what did the president do? He aired his grievances and attacked some people in the room. Why should we expect anything less than that tonight? But I tell you what, he's going to say some things tonight that the American people say, oh, no, that's not what we're feeling. He's going to get up and say something like he won affordability when many Americans would say they're treading water or drowning. He'll get up and say he's going to run on health care. I say bring it on, because the big, ugly bill is already starting to devastate rural health care. We just lost another birthing center where now people are going to have to drive an hour and a half or more just to see a doctor. He's going to show tonight how out of touch he is with the American people. And I think you asked soon-to-be Governor Klobuchar about the length of the speech. If he goes 2+ hours, he certainly doesn't know the American people.
Right, and that sort of fits into the presentation style that he has. You mentioned fact-checking or rebutting his claim that he won on affordability. I already showed earlier in the program the data that the public doesn't think that. That's in places red, blue, and in between. But here he was on that point.
I have to listen to the fake news talking about affordability. Affordability. Do you notice? What word have you not heard over the last 2 weeks? Affordability. Because I've won. I've won affordability. America is back. Our economy is roaring. And our country is respected again, respected like never, ever before.
Governor, your response.
My response is, if he doesn't want to listen to the news, listen to the American people. But the reason he won't do that is because they would say, stop taxing us. Tariffs are a tax on the American people. We or our businesses have paid 90% of all those billions of dollars that he brags about. The reason things are getting more expensive is Donald Trump. The reason everything that costs more, from groceries to throughout our economy, is Donald Trump. And now the Supreme Court has said not only did he raise prices, not only did he tax the American people, he did it unlawfully. And you know what? He owes us all a check.
When you look at the evolution in your state, have you seen any specific changes that are generalizable to Democrats? I mentioned that you came up in a year where he was surging, particularly in states like yours, and his appeal, as we know, has ebbed and flowed. Has anything changed? Do people still believe the promises of this leader, and how do you think Democrats can address it?
Oh, I think people are seeing the chaos and the harm that he's causing. I mean, I look at what the big, ugly bill is going to do in Kentucky. It threatens to close 35 rural hospitals, fire 20,000 healthcare workers. Each of those hospitals is the largest payroll in their community. So in that part of rural Kentucky, if the hospital closes, so does the restaurant, the coffee shop, the bank, the insurance company, you name it. What's already starting to hit and coming more is just a punch in the face of rural America. You want to see what that looks like? Talk to our soybean farmers. We have soybeans that are rotting in bins. In some places, they're burning them with markets that may be lost forever because of this president's tariff policy. You just look at the fact that I had 2 Republican state senators get up on the floor of the Senate about 2 weeks ago and say this president's immigration policies and tactics have gone too far. See, I think the American people aren't as partisan as we think. I just walked out of an interfaith dinner with people from all different faiths in a Christian church during Ramadan, all celebrating together. I think the American people want to like their neighbor, not believe they're the enemy from within.
You know, I didn't have Ramadan church observance in my bingo card tonight from you. I got 1 minute left. There was a big story in Washington, Democrats in the House concerned about the Trump DOJ still hiding Epstein documents. Do you view that as something that still needs more oversight, or out in the country, do you think people are more focused on other things heading into the midterms? How do you look at that from your vantage point?
Well, at this point, I'm convinced this administration is intentionally hiding something. Why? Because they've done it over and over and over. Our Congress passed a law saying they must turn over these documents, and this president is not above that law. But at the same time, we cannot take our eye off the fact that the American people are struggling. We need to be working to create jobs with better wages, to bring prices down, and to fight to preserve rural and urban health care.